Good morning, Gage Golightly. Welcome on VH Berries.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited. This is the first podcast I've ever done, so it's different, but I'm excited for this journey we're going to take.
I am extremely grateful because from the character of Bruce Hickman in Speakeasy or Bose the Goat in 68 Whiskey, Golightly meets the most mysterious character in contemporary cinema.
Wow, what an intro.
How are you doing today?
I am doing really well. This is honestly something really fun to take a break from my studies because I'm in school right now. So day in and day out is just study, study, study. So this is really fun to take a break to be a bit more on the creative side again.
I would love to discuss about the creative side that you just mentioned, Gage Golightly, but also of the studies that you, I guess, started again because this is September right now.
Yes. So right now I'm studying in community college because right out of high school I was working too much. I didn't have an opportunity to go to university. So seeing as I've been out of school for 10 years, I knew this was going to be difficult to kind of switch my brain from being the creative and making my own schedule to being on somebody else's schedule with school. So this semester I'm taking 14 units and I have hopes to transfer in a year or two. I'm not really in a rush to be majoring in psychology.
Absolutely. And can you tell us a little bit more about the subject that you are learning on an everyday basis?
Everyday basis. Oh, wow. It's really odd because it doesn't happen that often. Generally, you're studying in the science division or in the math division or humanities. And it happens to be that all of the courses that I'm currently taking are all overlapping in a really beautiful way. So I'm taking statistics and biology and abnormal psychology and human sexuality, and everything is overlapping to be basically one giant continuation of the same subject, which is about the scientific community, the things that we can do to improve what we have access to, and all about the scientific method. So it's really fun because it's like a quadruple down on the same subject. So I feel very advanced in my appreciation of the scientific method.
This is, as you just mentioned, Gage Golightly, a quadruple. And you just mentioned one very powerful word, which is psychology, because through the years, you made an obvious link and connection between acting and psychology, because by diving into all the personalities of the characters, you have to see the world through their eyes.
Absolutely. Yes. And I have been on that side for the last 20 years of my life where you have a stage set by a writer and then you have an actual physical stage set by a set deck and props, and you as an actor step into this preset world and you have to kind of recognize the space that you can play in that has been created for you. And so by studying psychology and getting on the reverse side of it, I'm able to see how what I've been doing for years has been a very small portion of what the greater psychology is, which is understanding someone else's perspective and having compassion and empathy for their experiences. And I feel as though education will, one, make me a better creative because I'll be able to see a wider range of perspectives other than drawing upon my own experience, but also potentially having the ability to help someone else, which is one of the highest callings, I believe, that somebody can have. And I see the creative side being one method to healing for an actor or any creative to give a part of themselves to their greater community. But being able to be working on a little bit more of a local scale once I'm to get my degree in psychology would be just absolutely phenomenal.
When you're using the word local scales, I am thinking of a local grocery store. But to come back to community college, it makes you a better creative. But there is also something else that is teaching you a lot of things, which is the sound.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, so again, I have to go back to just, my very small perspective, which is always being on this side of the camera. And so working with my partner, Jason, has been, oh, my earpod. Sorry, I never wear these, so very odd feeling. I like the earphones that connect on string because then you can't lose them. Sorry about that. So working with my partner, Jason, has been absolutely incredible to get on the other side of the camera because, again, instead of playing in the field that somebody else has created, you're able to set the stage as either a writer or a director or anybody who's on the other side of the camera. So it's really given me an additional opportunity to see how all of the parts can come together to create something new. And that's actually been way, way harder of a journey being on that side of the camera than in front because it's something I've never done before.
The Sound is a 7-minute long short film directed by Jason Christopher Meyer. And when we are taking a look at this piece of art, we can feel the Golightly footprint, especially with the language of sign that is everywhere into this short film.
Yes. And that's also something that not only intrigued my partner, but I actually was like, well, that's really amazing because I grew up signing. And so it was really fun that we were able to find an actress who could sign. But mostly what was important about the sound is the importance of sound in production. And I think it's often a part that's overlooked, and especially in my very limited perspective, you have to wear microphones and then you're told, oh, you have to take off jewelry because it's going to affect the sound. And as somebody who is just in their body, you're like, well, why does the sound matter? And so it wasn't really until we got into this project and working with Jason, I was like, oh, wow, sound is a huge part of what will set the mood for an audience. And so that was really fun to get to watch him edit and be like, oh, what if we messed with, how the sound is projected and you can hear the footsteps from left to right. And so your ears are constantly being overactivated. And it's just so interesting to deal with the psychology of what horror film is as well, because it's all about the building and the crescendo and the rise and making it, your hair stand up on your arms. And it's funny too, because I actually just detest horror films. I do not like them. I do not watch them. I am way too scared of them. And Jason is a huge, huge horror film lover. So having the two of us working together on something that is out of my comfortability was really interesting.
In conclusion, now we know that Gage Golightly biggest nightmare is to have to remove your jewelries before going to a movie set.
It's true. Being limited in jewelry. I mean, I express myself mostly through jewelry. I don't know. I think it's a really integral part of my persona. So having to take it off, I'm devastated.
And Gage Golightly, The Sound, has been featured in numerous film festivals. And if we take a deeper look into the storyline of those 7-minute short film, the story is taking place at 10:21 p.m. on Wednesday, November the 3rd.
Yes, so I think everybody should be very conscientious of November the 3rd coming up, because you never know if there's going to be some greater monster out there coming to get you. So that's something fun to look forward to.
And what I really like about the Jason Christopher Meyer directing is the small details in the decor and the background. For example, I notice a poster of the movie Sentinel on the wall.
What's really funny is that his home is nothing but horror movie posters. And so, when thinking about, okay, where are we going to film this short? It's like, oh, wait, this is actually a really perfect place. It was just his home. There was literally no set deck. It was just everybody show up, start filming, because it was perfect. And that's kind of the world that he lives in, is the darker horror, and he's inspired by having his horror film posters everywhere, as opposed to me. I'm inspired by, plants and pretty things. And it's so funny that we have these two very different personalities and different appreciations working together. But it does kind of balance, because instead of it being pulled too much in one direction, the other person saying, well, now wait a minute, I don't know if everyone's going to get that little reference, or, well, this is for the people who will. And so it's fun to see who picks up on it. So I really appreciate the fact that you saw that poster in the background.
And Gage Golightly, I would love to discuss about your journey that began in 2002, because you had something called dyspraxia of speech. Can you tell us a little bit more about this very essential chapter of your life that later on put you into the acting path?
Of course, I would love to share this because it's interesting. A lot of people think, there's no way that person could have had apraxia of speech, because I'm very blessed. I am able to communicate verbally, and that's all thanks to my parents. They were able to afford a speech therapist for me. And unfortunately, a lot of children who are afflicted with apraxia of speech, it's not actually covered by medical insurance. And so unless somebody can find a therapist and pay out of pocket, they are not able to ever be vocal or verbal. So this was something that was really hard, because I remember actually, I was in special ed up until first grade, because I could only communicate through sign and very limited verbal communication. And because I had my family supporting me and some teachers, I was able to, I'm not going to say the words make a full recovery. There are some things that are still hard for me in terms of sequencing. It's still difficult, but for the most part, I feel very blessed. And I wish that this is something that the medical community could change and make therapy accessible to everyone, because I can't imagine what my life would be like if I hadn't had all of the opportunities that I did in order to succeed.
And according to you, what were the biggest lessons from learning the signing language?
Well, sign, it's odd. I wish with all my heart that I could still sign. The unfortunate thing is, when you're in therapy for speech, when you're in speech therapy, if you're using sign to communicate, that becomes your first language. So as a child will learn the words verbally, sign is taken away, so that way the child doesn't revert to sign. So I now don't remember much of the sign that I had learned, but what I do remember is the feeling that I had of not being able to communicate or being able to use my voice. And that was really hard. I had a lot of, my peers were in regular school, K in first grade, were so mean to me. And it just kind of gave me a very soft heart and a lot of empathy to anybody's experience, because you never know what struggles somebody else is dealing with. And so if somebody else can just take away any bias or any stereotyping and just come heart forward and respect whatever that person is going through, it's the best way to increase just a brighter future and just a more human perspective of, we're all just trying to live our life and do our best. And you never know what somebody's going through, especially if it's more of a invisible, illness or an invisible force that somebody can't communicate.
You got, Gage Golightly, a soft heart for a brighter future. And you're actually from a small town in Northern California. And you kept, when you were in this chapter of your life, bothering your parents by telling them that you would become an actress by using the sign languages.
Yes, I bugged my parents from age, I think they keep saying I was like 4.5, signing to them, I want to be on TV. And they're like, oh, this poor thing, she can't even talk. There's no way she's going to be on TV. And eventually when I was 8 years old, they were sick of hearing it watching me sign it for 2.5 years and verbally communicating I want to be on TV for another 2.5 years. So we ended up packing up the car, driving to LA. And this was before cell phones, they were out, but not everybody could afford them. And we pretty much parked it at a hotel and just sat out by the pool like, okay, we made it to LA. And eventually we found a manager and she took me. And it's always so funny because I think about now, people will ask me fairly frequently, I want to be an actress. What would you suggest? And it's like, I can't even give advice because you can't do that now. You can't sit on somebody's doorstep waiting for them to see you. So I don't know how I got so lucky, but I guess sheer determination and a supportive mother to sit with me and be willing to believe in my dreams.
Your mother definitely believed in your dream, and you actually got your first role in Speakeasy. That's why I mentioned the main character at the very, very beginning, because of that signing particularity that you had. This is what made you special and different.
Yes. If I didn't sign, again, by age 8, when I'd moved to LA, I was still relying on some sign in addition to verbal communication. So I did still know more than what I know now. And I auditioned and they needed a girl who was deaf, but a girl who could sign. And I was the only one who showed up to the audition with the ability to sign. So that's the only reason I got that job. And it's just so odd to think that my initial handicap of not being able to speak is what led to my blessing of being able to get my first job.
That's very true, Gage Golightly. With only one person auditioning, you had at least 200% of chance to get the part. Yep,
if not more.
To make a little recap, Speakeasy was directed by Brendan Murphy. You played that part of Eva, but in the more global view, I sense that communication is at the center of your life. Even during the first episode of 68 Whiskey, we can hear English, of course, Italian, Pashto, the hand language, and music.
Yes. Which is another reason I loved working on 68 Whiskey. That job pushed me further than any other. And it wasn't for any other reason than I went full beast mode. Because I knew being in the military, my niece serves in the Marines. And so I knew, gosh, I'm somebody who doesn't really work out. And there's no way that's going to fly if you were to be portraying somebody of military personnel. So I was working out like an animal. And that job in particular, I pushed myself the hardest I've ever pushed before. But that job in particular was really fun because it did represent so many different cultures and worldviews and languages. And it was so fun getting to show up on set. And there were so many people that was one of the biggest productions I think I've ever worked on. So seeing how everybody works together and the roles that everyone plays, not only in front of the camera, but behind the camera as well, was really a great lesson for me to learn.
You were Gage Golightly pushing yourself because on the set there were a lot of costumes, of military costumes, a lot of beautiful landscape. If I understood correctly, it was actually recorded in Los Angeles, which is only one of the few times you could stay in the city because all of your other projects were elsewhere. Can you tell us about your mission by doing this feature film? Because I heard that it was in one of the parts to pay tribute of the military.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because 68 Whiskey was actually I'm so sorry, these earphones. It was actually another show before it was Americanized. And so this show was really just a respecting tribute to all of the military personnel who not only are serving their country, but the military personnel who are supporting those who serve their country. So 68 Whiskey is actually a medical unit. And so whenever military personnel are injured, the 68 Whiskey are deployed in order to aid those that have been injured.
I have my little suggestion and explanation of the number 69. It is maybe because you have to drink 69 shot of whiskey to maybe get rid of the pain of the war.
You're not too far off there. Yeah, it was really hard filming that, I guess, because you're right. There are a lot of invisible wounds of war as well to the physical wounds. And in fact, one of the actors that we had was a war vet, and it was heartbreaking because his story had lined so synchronously to the one that was fictionalized. And it was just heartbreaking to see, these soldiers, when they are serving, they not only have to deal with just being safe on the daily, but then when they do go home, how does someone deal with that trauma of seeing things that most of us don't ever see? And it's because of them.
In definitive, Gage Golightly, 68 Whiskey is the end of a specific work cycle for you, because as you just mentioned, it was recorded right before the pandemic, and since then you haven't been involved in a specific acting project, but rather focusing on studying. So I'm wondering how you're seeing the new chapter, the new page, and the new future.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for this new chapter. I just turned 29, so I like to call it cuspy 30s or the prequel to 30. And this really feels like my time to do something different. For the last 20 years, all I've known is acting and being somebody else's creation in a way with the characters they make. And I feel as though my calling is to, one, educate myself, two, help others, and above all, really, what I want to do is create. I want to write, and I have been writing religiously for the last 2 years, and I'm most excited about getting to share these projects with everyone. And working with Jason has given me a new perspective on what's possible, because he's kind of the gosh, I got a camera, I've got some friends, let's film, let's go. And I've always come from the productions with many hats and many people, and it seems almost impossible that one person can make something, but he's really opened my eyes to show me, no, as long as you have a story, you can tell it. And so I've been working on this new project that will soon be, I'm always so scared to talk about it, but I can't wait to share it with everyone. It's something that dabbles in a little bit of my past and kind of sets a new perspective on where I'm at now, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense. This is very inspiring because you're doing, as you just mentioned, Gage Golightly, something different, but also you want and you have this request for having more creative control and ownership on the project that you are doing right now.
That's about the best word I've heard, and that's well put. I thank you for that word. Yeah, ownership. Ownership is key. Ownership is key because I think, at least from my experience, I've never felt ownership over a project, because when you work, what you do on the day is very different than what's going to be on the cutting room floor, is very different than what's going to be put in the final cut, is very different than how it's going to be received by your audience. And so by having ownership over a project, it means not only am I in control of the world that I create, but who I cast and how it's cut, and it's complete and total ownership, which for me feels as though the opportunity to have a lot of pride in my work, because I will have the final say over everything. And I think what else makes this project really interesting is my 20 years experience in this specific industry and my perspectives and everything that I have experienced and seen. And it's interesting too, because I think in the public light, a lot of celebrities or public figures do not have ownership over their image, and they don't have ownership over their projects or their art. It becomes a public commodity once it leaves their hands. And so it deals with this, my project, it deals with the idea of consent. It deals with the issue of exploitation. And I think that this is a very hot topic issue right now, because there is a lot of issues with exploiting actors or exploiting women or exploiting children. And so what I want to do is give a stage and a voice to those who feel that exploit should not be practiced in the entertainment industry.
Absolutely, Gage Golightly. I will say that you will have full control on everything except the ownership of Bose the goat, because he belongs to Nicholas Combs.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That goat was so cool. It made me want one, but I have a pit bull Bowie, and she's about the size of the goat. So I guess I'm already a little full.
Can you tell us a little bit more about having animals on the set?
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, there's an old rule. Whenever you have an animal on set, extend the day, because you can't always tell the animal, hey, you got to look over here, or hey, do this. So really the whole production is stalled at the will of what's the animal going to do. And you can train animals, but gosh, on the day, when there's a lot of people around, the animals are going to respond differently. And so everything is just a lot more improvisational, I guess would be the right word, when you're working with animals.
We will have to extend the shooting time during the day, but also during the night. Thank you very much, Gage Golightly.
Well, thank you. This has been absolutely a blast.